Beth Crowley. I'm a singer-songwriter, and I'm an advocate for eliminating the stigma against issues surrounding mental health. I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression when I was a freshman in college, so I was 18 years old, and I had gone to a general doctor about something that was totally unrelated, and he started asking me some questions, and I guess the answers I gave to those questions led him to believe that there might be some mental health issues going on, and so he referred me to the mental health clinic that was on the college campus, and I did some screenings and appointments with them, and then that led to my official diagnosis. I think looking back, after I got my diagnosis, I could definitely tell that there were signs that there would potentially be some issues. I would always react to some situations in a way that was more extreme than what the situation called for. So something that might normally make somebody like medium level sad, I would be extremely sad. And I was always a sensitive kid. That was what, you know, people that knew me always called me, was sensitive. And as I got to be a teenager, I think that became more evident that I had something a little bit deeper going on. The first people that I told when I officially got diagnosed were my parents, and I was definitely nervous because it's not something that we had ever touched on. Like, issues that have to do with mental health is not something we'd ever openly talked about. So I didn't really know where they stood about medication or mental health issues, but I was very fortunate that they were very receptive to the fact that I had, you know, officially gotten diagnosed by doctors, and they were encouraging and non-judgmental when it came to the recommendation I got to take medication. And then when it comes to my friends, it's not something that I feel the need to say, like, purposefully, like to make a point to let them know that I, you know, take medication or that I have diagnoses, but I am very open if the topic of conversation comes up, and I'm also very open on my YouTube channel because I do a video series called Mental Health Chat, and I talk about the fact that I'm on medication. And so I was embarrassed at first, early on, but it's just part of what makes me me at this point, and so I have no issue telling, you know, friends, family, strangers, anybody that is curious to know more about what I've gone through. I never knew of anybody in my family that had any official diagnosis when it came to mental health issues, and it was not really something that was touched on very much in school. I think when I was going through middle school and high school, it just wasn't something that people were open about or that we learned about in health class or in any other context having to do with our education. And it's encouraging for me to see now that in a lot of high schools especially, it's something that people are more open with, so that kids can better understand what they're going through, and if it's just going through a hard time or if there's actually something deeper that's happening. I can usually tell with anxiety if I get too laser focused on something to a point where it becomes a little bit obsessive. I know that I need to take a step back and figure out how to deal with that. And then with the depression side of things, it just kind of comes and goes in waves. It's not anything that ever is very severe with me because I do take medication every day. But I can usually tell if I just am feeling very unmotivated, and I've learned to recognize those early signs and to make sure that I address them and acknowledge them. I usually try and tell somebody, so my husband is usually the one that I talk to about anything that is going on that I'm feeling stressed about or sad about, and just making sure that I sort through why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling, and if it is something that I just need to kind of get through, or if it's something specific that I can fix. But I usually, when it comes to especially the anxiety part, I just try and have the mantra of to try and not worry about things that are out of my control. So I try not to get too stressed about things that I don't have any say-so over, and focus more on the things that I can do that can help eliminate the anxiety. I think just having open conversations about it and acknowledging that more people than you would think are affected by mental health issues would go a really long way in eliminating the stigma. I think that just the more open and honest we can be about it, because it's not something to be embarrassed about. It's just in the same way that you would take, you know, some kind of medication for a heart disease or high cholesterol. You take a medication to make sure that all of your brain functions are working properly. And I think having the approach of just not being ashamed of it, and in turn making other people feel more comfortable to be able to talk about it, would hopefully make it so that it's something that people are not as judgmental about. And I think that a lot of people are not that judgmental about it. I think the fear comes from people being judged more than is actually happening. So I think people are afraid that everyone's going to judge them, and so they don't say anything, when in actuality 4 out of 5 of the people are probably dealing with their own brand of struggle. So just recognizing that more people are affected by it than you would think, and trying to be comfortable with who you are, and if that's part of who you are, then learning to embrace it and get through it. I did talk therapy when I was first diagnosed with anxiety and depression when I was a freshman, and I did that for maybe 6 months. So I would go, I think every week or every 2 weeks, and I would sit down with a psychologist and we would talk about my issues and how I was feeling and coping mechanisms. And I have not done any form of therapy in a long time. I am a pretty self-aware person, so I know when I'm going through something, and I'm able to have a dialogue with myself to figure out what's going on and what I need to do about it. And then I also have a very open and communicative relationship with my parents and with my husband, so they're kind of my source of therapy, and they help me work through things that I'm going through. But I know that there are a lot of people that benefit from therapy. I know that a lot of people I know go to therapy and definitely get a lot out of it. So it's something that I highly recommend for anybody that is struggling. And the easiest way to be able to find some place is a recommendation from your general doctor, or looking through a list of who's approved by your insurance, or just going online and searching, because online you can find if there's a particular specialty that you want a therapist to have, then you can find that. So there are plenty of places to be able to line up with the right therapist. And then the one other thing that I would say is, if you go to a therapist and it doesn't end up being the right fit, don't discount therapy altogether and say that it doesn't work for you, because it may just not be the right connection of therapist. Going to therapy and finding the right therapist is almost like dating, where you may not get it right on the first try. It may not be the person that you feel comfortable opening up to. So just be patient when it comes to finding the right person for you. I can't think of any instances where that has happened, and I think that that probably has to do with my approach about it, because it's not something especially since I've been an adult, it's not something that I shy away from or act like anybody has any room to criticize me or be judgmental of me. I just put it out there unapologetically. So I think it has to do with the attitude that you go into it with when you're sharing it with other people or talking to other people about it. You just kind of have to go into it with a bit of confidence of like, you know, this is not a huge deal and you don't get to make a big deal out of it. I feel like a lot of times, movies and TV shows especially that deal with mental illness, it's overly dramatic. The examples that I can think of immediately where it's like 13 Reasons Why, or I mean in some ways even like Perks of Being a Wallflower, it just is a highly dramatic version of what a normal person living with depression or anxiety is like and goes through. And I think that they're important stories to tell, but I would love to see more representation where it's not the complete focus of a TV series or a movie, the mental illness. It's just a character story that happens to be part of it. And that's just my kind of personal take on how media handles mental illness. I would say just be forgiving. Be forgiving of yourself, be forgiving of others, be patient. It's not something to carry shame about, and it's certainly not something to make others feel ashamed about. Everybody's just doing the best they can with what they have, and just try and make some sense out of what you're feeling and try and be empathetic and a good listener for somebody else that might be going through something. And just know that happiness takes work. It's not easy, and it may take a lifetime of work, but it's work that's worth it because being happy is worth it.